Yeah, I should do a little precursor and say that I am full of cold, and I didn't want to I didn't want to reschedule because we've had a
Yeah,
nightmare scenario for 6 months or so trying to
I
kind of
know.
reconnect,
But
you
it's
know.
quite impressive, quite impressive. I've got a bit of the cold as well, so if I'm even less intelligible than usual, I can only apologise. But
Yeah,
you know,
so I didn't want to cancel. I'd done an episode of Brainworms this afternoon, which is my like
yeah,
sort of comment on the madness of the digital age, and it was with this woman called Ali Miller, who's up your way. Well, by your way, I mean Scotland.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and she grew up in the Jehovah's Witnesses, and then she left the Jehovah's Witnesses and wrote a book about it. And it was heavy. It was understandably heavy stuff,
Yeah.
and I found myself going a bit like buzz-eyed because I feel kind of so out of it. So I do apologise
It's
if
quite all
that's
right.
how
We'll
this
get there.
conversation ends up, you know. Uh, and I also wanted to say that it's quite a weird one interviewing. It's really weird interviewing, like, you know. I mean, there's no way of saying this without making it weird, right?
I'll look away.
It's a strange one interviewing someone who's in like basically your favorite band ever. So that's weird. And there's almost part of me that's a bit like, I don't really know what I'm going to ask Stephen because it's like you just, I don't know, like I Facebook you
Yeah,
and
man.
go, hey, tell me what this song's about, you know. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I just felt like the music podcast, it's been revived, and I felt like
Good.
I'm approaching 200 episodes, and I was like, well, I haven't had a member of Biss on yet. That's ridiculous. We should just get it done.
Yes.
But I also, I'm not sure that I'm not sure that whatever we talk about is going to be better than the conversation I had with John at Primavera about 12 years ago in the pissing rain. And I mean, I didn't really know what podcasts were then, but with hindsight, I'm a bit like, we should have recorded that.
Oh, yeah,
That was fucking
absolutely.
brilliant, you know?
We had all the technology to record everything. We just didn't do it. You know, it's like there's so little video footage of us as well. It's like why did I hated being filmed and I hated being interviewed sometimes, and now I like to get drunk at night and go on YouTube and have a sort of misery surf to see if I can find any old footage of us, which is that's a dreadful confession. But
Well,
anyway,
no,
you know it's John.
no. Manda's brilliant at digging it out, though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I feel like there's these little bursts of activity where it's like, oh, here's a video of us and the Beastie Boys in Japan
Yeah.
or whatever. You know, that's it's kind of amazing that. I mean, you say there's not a lot out there, but I don't know. There's more than a lot of acts from that
Yeah,
time. You know,
yeah. Maybe
why didn't you like being interviewed? Just because you
I don't know.
not bad music
I
joke?
think I think I've just found that. I mean, this is a classic musician moan, but like when we were actually popular, you'd have whole days of you're in Japan, but you're in an office doing 12-hour shifts of just talking and saying the same things.
Yeah,
So so yeah, I guess I started to resent it because not because I wanted to particularly enjoy the culture of the cities we were in because I didn't have any interest in that at the time. I just wanted to go to the record shops. So, so that's pretty much I've come full circle where nobody really wants to know what I have to say about me, but I get to buy records now, so that's the good thing. So, but yeah, I think I'm really bad for. Uh, I suppose having kids is the first point at which I'll be like, oh, I was on that program, or oh, I've played there, and then I can look for some YouTube footage of it, and then they can be horrified by it. So that's I mean that's a benefit. But usually what happens is I just when I'm on my third glass of wine, I just watch all the indie charts from the chart show from like 1989 to 1997. It's just I think that's all I follow on YouTube is are people that have taped stuff off the telly, and it's I find that like it's so reassuring to see. I know exactly what songs were going to get played and which ones were skipped and the chart positions, and then eventually we're in it. So it's like I've gone off at an early tangent, but yeah, I
I
found that
mean, this sounds a
strangely
bit.
different to be number one in the indie chart on ITV. That was
This
better than being on top of the fucking pops.
this sounds a bit like a breakdown.
I've been heading that way for a while. It's that's why I've been postponing with you. Just I had to wait till I was really in a dark place to do this properly. I'm just joking.
I mean,
Uh,
are you joking?
no, I mean I think I'm not breaking down, but I think there's a definite period of I think I think just the last Bis record, I put so much into it to get almost nothing back, and it's really hard sometimes not to just feel a bit peeved about it, and then you just kind of like, yeah, it's. I really want to keep making music, but it becomes harder and harder when you get so little in return, and it's no one's owed a living in music, this, that, and the other thing. I say it sarcastically, but I just want some. I kind of want our band to be revived in my lifetime, ideally. Do you know what I mean? It's just it just becomes harder. It just becomes harder because it's like I admire the bands that still do it, and we've been doing it one way or another for such a long time. So maybe it's just like we're coming up to 30 years of having made records. So that's a decent span. So I
That's
suppose it's
fucking
just a natural time for reflection,
30 years is crazy, man.
isn't it?
I was like, with this run of episodes I'm doing, I was like, I looked at who I could get to, and there's some good people in there. Hopefully, people will have heard those episodes.
Yeah.
But I, I was like, I really need some youth. And then I was like, well, I'm speaking to Biss, and I'm speaking to Ash, and then
Yeah.
I was like, oh, they're my
Yeah.
age, aren't
Yeah.
they? So,
Exactly.
I mean, do you not feel a bit like you have been revived?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. It's constant frustration of just like thinking when you think you've made something good and it just doesn't land, and we're now so used to doing something that we think's good that doesn't really land, or it lands in our small circles. Our remaining
Yeah,
fans will always appreciate what we do, but yeah, I kind of it's putting anything out there into the world. You want like
but
you
can
know,
you can you
yeah.
visualize? Can you visualize? Like, is there another band that you look at and you're like, oh, I'd like us to be talked about in the same
Yeah.
breath as that?
Oh, I mean, yeah, all the time. Every time I see a band, it makes me want to do music things. But yeah, in terms of like, I don't want to use the word career, but it's sort of longevity and respect. And I suppose musically dissimilar, but maybe it's somebody like Deerhoof, you know, are
Mm-hmm.
just they're kind of like they do mad things. They make lots of records and they play to a good sized audience wherever they go. You know, like that was I think it's very difficult for a band like the band that we are and were to sustain it. We didn't do it consistently enough at the start, and then we took a big break. Um, and we always have been a bit kind of like three different bands all at the same time.
I
So
was,
that does tally with Deerhoof, to be fair. But yeah,
yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, I did Dear Who for the podcast
but
before
yeah,
I
yeah.
took
I
a
listened to that.
break,
Yeah,
and I mean, they are mental.
yeah,
I mean, there's a little bit of pot kettle black from me there, but they are. When I was talking to them, I was genuinely like, "You're mental."
yeah.
But they were, I mean, the Dear Who, aren't they? They're amazing.
Exactly. You have to be, and I think like you have to be a bit mental to do what they do, and I think, um, yeah, there's probably like it's bands that we grew up with. I think it's do you know what it is? And I try not to sound better, but I do have a cold, so I'm in a bad. But like basically all the other bands that we grew up with in Glasgow, um, have sort of managed to sustain themselves in a way that I always expected us to be able to do. I think
So you mean
I've
like
heard,
You mean Mogwai
yeah, I've heard
and
like Stuart's. I mean, was it with you or with someone else? I can't remember. I listened to him doing a podcast, and he was just like when Mogwai were coming through, he just assumed that Biss would always be a big band. Because we were the pop stars of that time, and it's like the irony is that we are the ones that have gone right back to the bottom, right full circle, which is in a way it is kind of poetic because we started as the little DIY band. We went really big way early, and then we've slowly declined to the point at which we're back to the start as a wee DIY band, which is probably what we should have been all the way through. So I can take the positives from that. We found our natural place again, but yes, I mean it's hard not to like. I adore these people. I love these bands.
I, I
But
think
it's,
this.
I'm coming across quite better here. I realize, but it's a genuine like it really hurts me in my core that I don't get to make music from a living. You know, and we did it for such a brief period. When you look back, we were only really full time as a band for like 5 years. And we've been doing it for 30 years. So it's such actually little. It's a little blip that we were actually successful in. You know, But it's when once you've been successful, it's really it's a constant struggle to mentally get over it, I suppose.
I
And
think
that's
I think
yeah,
it's I think it's a weird one. I'm really I'm really friendly with Future Heads, and
yeah,
I remember talking to Ross years ago, and I remember him saying, I think they'd played. I mean, this was years ago, like well over a decade ago, and I remember he was like, he was telling me about. I mean, he listens to this podcast. He might bollock me for repeating a private conversation, but whatever.
yeah.
I've known him for 20 years, so
Fine.
whatever.
That's enough.
Yeah, I think so. And I remember him saying that he was on stage at Brixton once, and they weren't headlining; they were supporting someone,
Yeah,
and he was like, it was such a weird feeling because he was like, I don't think we'll ever be here again. Like, I don't think that we're getting any bigger.
yeah,
And and I actually find the Future Heads, I have like endless frustration about the Future Heads. They were very much like my band, right? Like I championed them all the time when I
yeah,
was Enemy and all that. And I always remember thinking that in a weird way, it was like, I don't know, I always was like, if they were like an American band, I could see them becoming something like Deerhoof, like, but because the culture of music in Britain is so much about the new, there's something about like, I mean, I remember like talking to someone at Enemy, like an editor at Enemy when I was starting out, and I think I remember pitching a band that were on like their third record, and they were like, "What are you on about? Like
yeah,
we've already done them," and I was like, "Yeah, but like bands get better,
yeah,
and on one hand, I love that sort of search for the fresh and the new, but on the other hand, I just think it's just such a reductive way to kind of
yeah,
look at music. And I just think with your band, it's like, because you did burn so brightly at the beginning, but also you were so kind of misunderstood that it's like, I mean, I just don't know what you do about it. And the thing that I
yeah,
always hope that you understand is that, no disrespect to Mogwai or Delgados or whatever. I love those bands, but there is still. I mean, I just don't think those bands change the lives of people like your band did. Like, not that the people who's had their lives changed were like, you know, a million people, but like the people who did. Yeah, I still bump into people at your shows in London, and I used to send letters to them like 30 years ago. Do you know what I mean? That's
yeah,
fucking crazy. I don't
yeah,
know
yeah.
another band that, but I don't know whether that's
Yeah.
enough to dine out on.
No, I know. Yeah, I mean, it's a total. It's amazing that we got to do it at all. Amazing that I know that we mean so much to so many people.
Yeah,
It's it's almost we're sort of like a weird, almost like cardiacs or something, where it's just such an intense adoration that a very small number of people have for us. But it's also insane that a band as strange as us broke through, and that, so would that happen now? I don't know. It's sort of like you know,
I mean,
I've got to. I'm glad it happened. You
I mean,
know,
it is strange and it's not though, because in lots of ways, I mean, you were like pop stars. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like three people who, I mean, literally down to the sleeve art, you were cartoons. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
It's like that. I mean, Starbright Boy, for example, Eurodisco, like, they're Blur songs, you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like,
They are.
so that's the thing
They
that's kind of
definitely was.
weird is that and obviously, Japan saw you that way. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I wish I had the answer. I mean, the new record, I mean, I say new record last year,
yeah,
it's my second favorite Bis song, but it's also Bis song,
yeah.
cold.
It's just one song. It is.
It's my second favorite Bis album, but
Yeah,
again, it's that thing of like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how any of it works anymore.
yeah.
Like,
No, I've not got a clue. I think it's just we just throw something out there. You think it's good, and you just want people to hear it. But how to do that is just like the mechanics of it escape me now. Feels to be like you're just throwing something into a void, and uh, you know, ugh, like I just don't know. I don't know, but it's it's not for me to work out really. You just got to keep. So it sounds like a total football manager thing. It's just on to the next game. Really, just like we've just got to keep making music and keep playing shows. There's nothing we can't do anything radical. But yeah, I mean, I think uh, so many bands will find themselves in this position, and I'm I think I'm somewhere between impressed and upset with people who can successfully move away and give up and just do something else. So I think, amazing if we'd just burned brightly and then stopped completely, then it would be a chapter of your life rather than your entire life, I think
It,
that's,
it's
you
weird.
know,
I was listening to a podcast this morning with Ruby Wax on, and hey, I mean, not the biggest, I like I like those shows, those
yeah,
mischievous talk shows she did in
yeah, yeah,
the little documentaries in the '90s and stuff. But I was listening to it because there was a particular kind of therapy that she tried out, and a friend of mine had recommended it and was like, "Oh, you should listen to this podcast." Like she talks about it. Anyway, I was listening to it, and she was talking about how she'd kind of like she struggled so much with like that she didn't do what she used to do. She was talking about how like when she did like a podcast with Louis Theroux, and she'd irrationally hated Louis Theroux for years because she felt like he did what she did, right?
yeah, yeah,
Almost like he'd taken her job, and I mean he must have been bemused to hear that. But like it really got me thinking, because I somehow sort of managed to get by, but there are times when I think about like being at music magazines, and I kind of miss the bullshit that I
yeah,
hated.
yeah, yeah,
It's a bit like, oh, I haven't been invited to that, I've been invited to that, and like I don't know, I just feel a bit like you've got to sort of free yourself from that in a way, but you also need something else that kind of gives you the same feeling. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's that's the problem.
yeah.
It's
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, like, my trade now is I run pubs, and I do so relatively well. But
yeah,
it's good to have, something that not necessarily a talent, but I've got a reasonable business brain. I run a relatively successful small pub company, but it's I'm doing it out of to survive rather than as a passion. You can be good at something but not feel the passion. And nothing. I don't. I love playing shows, but I just I'm in my shed just now, and this is where I make the music, and this is where I'm happiest. If I like come in here, shut the door, put the lights on, and load up a drum machine, and I'm like, there's it's a sort of shoulder tingle of like joy of like yes, this is what I was meant to do. So yes,
have, have you had
I
any?
don't yes I don't mind you know I don't look at new bands jealously. I don't look at my friends' bands. Jealous is not the right word. But I'm proud of them and I'm happy for them. But yeah, I'm also I still love the thrill of finding new music as well. I love finding new music from the olden times that I didn't realize existed. All these things. So I still the music is very much still in my entire life. It's just I just don't have I don't have the time to do it as much.
Yeah, I just think at some point, I mean, I guess this is just what, you know, people who are confused about the state of play in not just in the music industry, but like in the world, is I always just think, well, you know, chaos can only reign for so long. At some point, there is some kind of equilibrium, you know what I mean? At some point, someone does work it out. But I don't know, I think it's interesting you say that about that podcast with Stuart. Like, I remember I mean, it was quite a maudlin podcast in a
Yeah.
way because we were just like bemoaning the things that we loved, and
No.
like I think that's a sad thing, that it is that thing of like I don't mind progress if you get something out of it, and I just that's a weird thing to say. I don't mind kind of like things changing if like you feel like they're getting better, but
Yeah.
actually the demise of record shops, the demise of the music press, like less people making fanzines because they
Yeah.
would do that now, like people not selling 7-inch singles at gigs, little pin badges, all of that shit. John
Yeah. Yeah.
Peel, Evening Session, all that stuff that I fucking loved. It's a bit like, well, that went, but what did we get instead? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I don't know. Like, I'm conscious of being like, oh, all these things from the past, and they will have been replaced by something that I know nothing about, or is tangential to how I consume music or how I make music. That's it. But um,
I don't know.
yeah.
I will say this though. When I was at Kerrang, we did some like reader research, like
Uh,
where you got kids to come in the office and you bought them pizza, and you just you were like,
yeah.
what was the first record you bought, and just to try and kind of understand their music, their habits as music fans, and like, I mean, they were amazing. It was literally like the best thing I did. It sort of towards the end of a job that I found quite miserable,
Yeah,
and but it was so kind of inspiring because they were like, you know, they did everything that they could that was the same as like me when I was a teenager, and I presume you. But it was
yeah,
like just that it wasn't there. They were
yeah,
like, oh, they were like, we're going to go to Rough Trade, you know, because we're in London visiting Kerrang, and I was like, oh wow, that's amazing. And they were like, yeah, we'd go to a record shop and buy all our records, but there's just not one in my town or whatever.
yeah,
And that's the thing that sort of bums me out so much is that I don't actually think the stuff that we lost is something that people don't want anymore. It's just not
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
How do
definitely, it's yeah.
how do we make this more positive?
Sorry, yeah, I know. Well, I started it. I started it by,
Yeah,
by,
no,
by going on a rant.
I
But
was
yes,
a, I was
it's.
I was a willing. I feel like I
I know,
egged
I
you on
know,
slightly.
I know, I know.
I mean, I do with the most recent record.
Yeah,
I love. I mean, like I say, I think it's like a great record. That song, "The Who's Who of What."
yeah.
I mean, that's a classic. Not a classic Biss song in the sense that
Aye.
it's like, but that's a song, man. I mean, I look because I don't know whether I've ever told you this, but I probably
Uh,
have. I love all that, like, you know, I love theme from Tokyo. I love that
yeah,
thing where you and John are singing. There's just a sort of somberness, like the way that you two sing together.
yeah,
It's probably
yeah,
not the right
absolutely.
word, really. But did you?
Yeah.
Had you always had that? I don't know whether I've ever asked you that. Did you have that
Ah,
when you were kids, or?
I think so. Yeah, I think I do remember you saying this before, and it is there's I think you've said before just the sound of our two voices together, even though
Hmm.
they're similar, they're not quite the same voice. So it is a slightly different thing you get with that family singing thing together.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
the melancholy thing, I mean, it creeps in. It's always there. But yeah, definitely. I trying to do some real archiving stuff. It's maybe just again the passage of time and feeling a bit like I don't know. I'm literally got boxes of cassettes that I'm just going through and I'm finding rehearsal tapes, finding demos that me and John did before Amanda was even in the band. And yeah, there's stuff from like when I'm 16, 17 or whatever, and it'll be based on the records I was listening to, but there's some serious gloom in there, and just yeah, and really yeah, lots of minor key stuff. The best pop thing really happened when Amanda joined, and we started to incorporate more of our influences really. So anything pre Amanda's quite I wouldn't even I can't even say who it sounds like, but there's like albums worth of mad stuff that no one's ever going to hear, and I think that's the way it should. But it was nice for me to hear it. It should stay. But yeah, there's the Who's Who of What. Some of the stuff from the most recent Biss albums. I've genuinely gone into the Prince Paisley Park style archives that we've got and just be like, what's this? There's like 30 seconds of a riff somewhere on a tape, and I'm just like, what? Why did we never use that? So there's I would have always rejected that as a sort of like, no, we don't use anything that we've rejected in the past. But there's a difference between rejecting something and just simply forgetting about it. So Who's Who What is definitely comes from the early 2000s or something, where I've done a demo and I've gone,
Oh,
no,
right,
I don't
right.
like it. It's too 80s, and so I've written it off when maybe be for Return to Central, and I've decided it was too electro, which is not to say it was a reject, but I knew it was a good tune. But if I fall out with the tune for whatever reason, I've finally got over the notion of bringing something back that should be brought back, and we've got such a mad archive of stuff. Lots of that was new stuff as well, but I thought just there was certain bits that brought from the past, and going through a real melancholy nostalgia for the very early 90s indie dance, for want of a better term, etc. So I started putting breakbeats on things. I was like, that's it. That's the sound of the album. So
Right,
so
right.
it's so yeah, that's where the gloom is, because it's always a looking back. There's weirdly, I don't know why this comes to mind. I'm going to reference my own lyric, but there's in a song from Return to Central. Um, I think it's Weird Complicated. It's on. It says something like, "I never tire of looking back. My expectations always rise. just at the point that all hope dies. And I heard that, I was like, yep, that kind of sums up my
Well,
recent.
do you know what? I mean, I know it's a the song, but
Hmm.
like Black Iron Skyline is like if you were called Black Iron Skyline, like
Yeah,
people would see you very differently. Do
yeah,
you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. That's true. That's true. Mercifully, the name was too long to fit into the boxes in the rehearsal room's bookings diary, so they just took
Right,
all
right.
extraneous stuff out. So that's how it really happened. So
I don't think I knew that.
yeah,
I love that. It's not that I really want to kind of like list my favorite bands because I was just a bit like, oh, what order do I put them in? But
yeah, yeah.
it's funny. I was listening to there's that In Utero reissue, the Nirvana reissue, like 30 years,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was listening to it the other day, and I was like, I like this more than anything that I've heard in like a decade, and it's amazing. Even when you love something so much, when you find something out about it you didn't know, and that's what's so funny when I speak to you guys. It's like fucking, I didn't know that, and I literally, when I was a kid, I devoured everything. Like there's things I could throw at you that I think you just find creepy.
That's
It was
all for
like,
it. I'm here for that content.
how did you get your fringe so straight? Did you iron it?
I never ironed it. No, I think I just very rarely washed it. So it's sort of it was held down by grease in a straight line. I don't know. I don't. Obviously, it's a sensitive subject now because I haven't had hair for quite some time.
Well,
But yeah, it's all
me
right.
too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Don't know. I did.
I just remember I had really quite curly hair when I was a kid,
Aye.
and I used to like before I went out, I used to like wet it
Yeah.
and like put like a beanie on so I could try and like
It's like,
make it
I just
straight.
had a very natural bowl cut. There was
Um,
we did my batteries side project a few years ago. I did a video for a song called Human Requirements, and I ripped it off a Paul McCartney video where it's that coming up Paul McCartney video where he's just various guises of himself. He's dressed as a Beatle, and playing the bass. He's had various eras of Paul McCartney. So I tried to do that, and one of them was wearing a wig so that I had my nice straight fringe again. But we had to go to
right.
hairdressers and get the wig was put on my bald head, and the hairdresser had to cut it to look like my 90s hair. She kept looking at the picture of me in the 90s, trying to match it with my wig, and then she showed me the picture of me with hair, and she went, "Why did you not keep that wig?" And I was like, "No, that was my hair. It's just
Right.
it was just a freakishly straight fringe. You're right." So she thought my fringe was as in, it was my fringe never existed. I'm just going to put that out there now. It was always a wig.
Well,
That's why it's so straight.
it's weird because John had that as well. John had like a good kind of sort of bowl cut for want of a better term. But then there was that period where he sort of went a bit kind of Wolfman, and it was a bit like
Massive sideburns.
that kind of right. I think he's right wing, but that kind of right wing politician, that Argentinian politician that is sort of keeps making the news. I think he's and
Yeah, okay.
and I'm a bit there's a bit of a sort of a social dancing era John Disco about him.
Well,
Yeah,
it's not where I was expecting to see a John Disco influence, but there you are. It's nice to be
exactly.
remembered, even if it is.
I'm a bit worried about that song "Stress" on the record.
Worried.
It's well, that riff is it's. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've thought of this, but that riff is very close to lap dance.
Oh, yeah, I suppose it is. It hasn't crossed my mind until this point.
Okay, yeah.
It was
There's
definitely I stole the groove type. Well, I mean, it's a sort of rave King Crimson crossover, which is no one does. But it was when I heard "Offense" by Little Sims, which
oh
that time
right,
was the
right.
best thing I'd heard, and I just was like, I just wanted to get something of the groove of that, but obviously using programmed rave drum samples instead. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a brand new one. Well, I mean, it's been out for a year, but that was one that was a definite. That's the joy of still making music. Is I love that track. And I love the fact that we got Alternate to remix it as well, so we could really tie the rave
Did
references all
you?
together. Like that made me happy. I don't really give a fuck that nobody listened to it. Certain people love it. Certain people that have made music or I've been around music in Glasgow for ages, are like, that's the track. I'm like, that's good. I love to hear that. That's this kind of thing that keeps me going. But yes, it is a worrying track as well. But yeah, I'm gonna have to listen to the lap dance and now hate my own song as a result.
Well, it was that thing of like being a bit kind of apprehensive when I was listening to it, because I was a little bit like, this note needs to go somewhere else, otherwise
really?
it is the riff.
No.
But like it does go somewhere else. But like there was a moment where I was like, but also, I mean, I don't know. I've been listening to. Do you play video games ever?
I try. I go in and out. One of my daughters is right into FNAF and things like that now, so I see them. But yeah, no, I don't. I wish I had time, but I don't.
Yeah, I'm playing a game called Fallout 4 at the moment, which is like quite an old game. It came out like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I was busy 8 years ago, and I'm not really now.
Exactly.
So,
Nice.
and there's a bit that the score of it is amazing. It's like sort of orchestral, and my missus is away this week. Her favourite band's Pet Shop Boys, and I'm dying for her to get back. Not kind of totally because I miss her, but also just so I can point out a little bit in the score and go, doesn't that sound like the Pet Shop Boys?
Yeah, nice.
To which she'll be like, no, it doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Speaking of alternate and kind of electronic music from that era, I've just been literally just before we started talking, I've been talking to Richard Norris from The Grid.
Nice.
Yeah, I think he's going to come on the podcast.
Which, good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Are these songs hard to? I remember being at a gig in, I think it was at Joseph Wells in Leeds.
Yep.
I think it was Social Dancing Era, and I remember there was someone in the crowd who was like, "It's all on tape," and you, and you lost your rag. I was just about to say, is it hard to? I don't know, like how much of it is on tape, Stephen?
Well, none of the vocals, which is the hardest part to do.
Yeah, of course.
All of these things, when I'm writing a song, I've never worked out what key I need to put things in so that I can actually sing them live. So something like Stress, for example, is way too high.
Right.
So I bought a vocal octave pedal to try it, but it just sounds too funny.
Right.
Essentially, more things are on tape than used to be, but I go to massive concerts. Like you see if you see Confidence Man, who are great.
Right.
But live, it's just like there's a live drummer and somebody's pressed play on all the music. So I'm fine with that because there's a performance there. I think there was definitely it was more precious in the 90s because we were doing all the toilet circuit venues, and people would be like, you're going to have a drummer in 6 months because you're not going to make it without one. And I'm just like, just watch us, So all of that, the defense, the hackles are up when people, going to America. Everywhere we go, it's like, I hear drums, but I can't see them. It's just like every single place, and people just not taking it seriously. But that doesn't matter now. There's like, I think live, as soon as you see a live drummer, you stop thinking about all the stuff that's on backing tracks. But like, essentially, there's a drum machine, there's a sequence bass line. And more modern times, there's probably some synth pads or whatever in there, but it's the vocals are the hardest thing, and I've seen plenty of artists that have got vocal things on backing tracks, and it's like, see if we were selling out 3,000 capacity venues, then we'd get some other people to do bits and pieces and put them in the background, but we're not. So
I'm trying to remember. There was a story that I read in the music press when I was growing up, and it was someone who'd gone up to Richie from the Manic Street Preachers and gone, "You're not even playing people that you shouldn't be allowed to be in a band." Yeah. I'm trying to remember who it was. It was someone.
I tell you what, though, as well, I remember there was a Melody Maker or NME review. The guy's name escapes me, which is probably a good thing. Not sure, but anyway, the point was, now, like in this heyday, I was not a particularly good musician. I'd write the songs, but I'd get John to play all the bits, really. So most of the records, I'm on him. I'm not full Richie Manic or anything, but certainly I'm a much better guitarist now than I was then. So I remember, I think it was also in Leeds, funnily enough, doing a gig, and the review was just like, Sci-Fi Stevens playing a Rickenbacker as an insult to the instrument and all that. And it's that kind of snobbery you would get.
What?
Because I had a Rickenbacker because it was lovely, But I was, bar chords only really.
But
So
they were critiquing like your musicality.
yeah, just basically like it's fine just to get the accusation you can't play. We used to get that all the time. They can't play, and that was technically right because only John could really play. But yeah, I just loved basically I loved the fact that I'd got this lovely guitar and treated it like a piece of shit. It's like now of course I would never dream of doing that. But I did sell the Rickenbacker as a result of that in a bad mood. But yeah, there was a snobbishness about our musical ability, and it's like, well, your technical instrument ability is different to your creative ability. So we were creating beyond our our musical limitations. And people hated that. People hated it. It's just like you don't. It felt people would essentially, it was like we didn't deserve it. That is always the tone. So
It's
everything's on
so
me,
weird. It's so
isn't it?
weird, like
It's so weird. It's like you just don't write about us. Do you know what I mean? So
I,
and now
I always,
they don't come and now they don't write about us. So it's all fine. But
I always, I always think that if my way into music had been like Joe Satriani instead of like Nirvana, right, then maybe I would have thought like this. But
yeah,
like right from the off, when I'm watching like Nirvana documentaries as a kid, and Dave Grohl's going, writing a great song is just like writing a nursery rhyme, or it's Kurt Cobain's talking about, it's more important what you've got to say than actually kind of the ability to sort of say it. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Maybe I would think differently, but I just never did. And what's really weird to hear that is, I just always, as a music journalist, I just never was like, oh, I'm here to sort of critique the ability of the musicians. Like, it just seems so unimportant when
Yeah.
it's about songs or what they're saying or whatever. But that said, and I don't want to say it was because it's a music journalist I get on really well with these days. But we didn't really when we worked together. I
Yeah, yeah.
remember being in an editorial meeting once and me being like, we should put Crystal Castles on the cover, and him being like, that would be a disgrace. They can't be on the cover of Enemy.
Uh-huh.
They don't even have a drummer.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I I just remember being like, at this point, we're like 30 years away from punk. Do you know what I mean? Like, how are we having this conversation? But I don't think you could ever. I mean, even like the sort of scrappy sort of punk pop stuff of that kind of teensy era,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think you could listen to it and be like, well, there's nothing else going on here.
No, I know. I think it's just, yeah. I think live I was too focused on just jumping about, and I really didn't. I wasn't concentrating on playing. There's like a really bad video of us playing on Australian telly. I had to show the kids, and it's just like I am a disgrace to the instrument at that point. I will accept it. But then the flip side, we put out Peel Session records from like 1995. They just came out recently, and they sound great. And it's like because we're all really concentrating really hard on doing it right.
Right.
And it's great. It's like there's it is musicianship. It's some of the technique is rudimental, but it's like there's so much going on, and like even candy pop. There's so many little riffs, and it's intricate as fuck. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But it's
totally.
also stupid and basic at the same time. So I have a long relationship with that song. And sometimes I hate it, sometimes I don't. But listening to the Peel Session version, I was like, "There's mad stuff. Why am I playing this riff? It doesn't make any sense. Like,
Yeah.
why has John let me do this?"
It,
I would just do something and be like, "That's it." Like,
it
so I was not coming from a trained like, "Oh, let's like put the seventh in there, whatever." I was just like, "Can I do this funny little bit?"
it does seem like when you play that song now that you are like less resentful. There was a period where it was a bit like, well, got to play this. Whereas like now, it's always like
Yeah.
you sort of own it. You know what I mean?
But we didn't. We did that absolutely stupid thing of we took it out of the set. We didn't play it for like half of Biss's existence in a really petulant way, which would drive me mad to see a band now.
Yeah.
I kind of respect it, but like yeah, it's definitely. I found a tape from a social dancing era gig. I think it was in Belgium or somewhere, and we've and it's quite punk rock, but it's also stupid. I think we've played a sold out gig to 1,000 folk, and we've just played 40 minutes, and we've just played social dancing and pissed off, and not played anything else. It's like whoa, that's why
Yeah.
they were chasing us. So yeah,
Yeah.
but we were certainly we were quite brave at times, which is another way of saying quite stupid. But yeah, I
Well,
think
well,
all reflections stupid, stupid the ball out.
give
So
me some other examples of that.
definitely like not recording an album quickly when we were actually in the newspapers and in the charts. We had enough songs. We could have just gone in and recorded those songs and whacked out an album.
So this is this
Yeah.
pre-social dancing then? Or?
Well, no, I think basically for the new Transistor Heroes, we didn't want any old songs on it.
Oh yeah.
And that's just daft now. You would never do that now, but that was, in a sort of punk rock factory. Even Belle and Sebastian were doing it. It was like the singles don't go on there. So, I think that's brave, but that's really stupid because we had to go. We went round the world with a set of songs that we wrote really quickly that weren't as good as the ones that we'd already released that we'd refused to put on the record.
Right,
They're good. I think it's a really, really strange record. They're our first album proper. It's really strange. And so in one way, I would love to know what it would sound like had we just gone, okay, as an experiment, let's take Candy Pop, School Disco, Kill Your Boyfriend, all the hits. Let's go into a big studio and make them sound massive and commercial and just see what happens. It wouldn't be the right thing for us to have done. But with this amount of time to reflect on it, be amazing to hear it. Like the American mix of Holy Bible or whatever. Just be like, whoa, this is mental. I'd love somebody to somehow AI it together. Just like here's the recordings now, make them sound like Butch Vig, mix them. Do you know what I mean?
I sort of feel like you should make that a project actually.
I know. We'll never be able to re-record it and do it the same way. But yeah, it probably is. If we got the master recordings, the technology probably does exist. So that's my next waste of time project. But yeah, we're brave.
It's so good to hear you admit that though, because it is such a weird record. Like
it's so odd.
Yeah, because
it sounds really odd, but it's sorry.
Well, no, it is weird. It's like I remember. I think I went to God, was it HMV or Virgin Megastores? I don't think there was a Virgin in Doncaster, but like I skipped school and went and I listened to it on the like on the listening booths.
Yeah,
like with it. God, that dates me. And I remember like making notes because I wanted to like write about it for my fanzine, right? So I was there, I'm wearing my blazer and that, and I'm making notes and listening to it. And I remember being like, I like all of these songs, but they don't really make sense together. And the drum machine seems a bit loud. And and I remember being like, oh, I like Pop Star Kill, but I like, I don't know, Secret Vampires more. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I do agree with what you're saying, but I don't know. I still don't think that's kind of what quote unquote went wrong. Like,
no. I think you're right there. I think to be fair, that it's a weird album, but it did. People in America and Japan didn't know about Secret Vampires or Candy Pop, so that album, Tell It to the Kids, was a single in America rather than Starbright Boy. So that's Tell It to the Kids is the song that people know us for in America, the Discount and the Powerpuff Girls, obviously. But it must have been a good enough record to slightly break us in America. But I just find that bizarre. Like it's basically, if it was our second actual album, it would make more sense. But if it was our second actual album, we would have taken longer to write it. Stupidly, like, we were just trying to do. I think we were trying to just do 4 EPs and stick them all together. So it makes the albums too long, so it sounds dead quiet on vinyl.
It is really long, like it's weird.
It's mentally long. I think I was trying to do a Park Life thing, except we had no little short songs. They were all full length, and then Rebel Soul, we added a krautrock section onto the end of it for no apparent reason, just to make it even.
It's good though. It's good though.
I would never ever, like, now I'm super conscious about lengths of records. I'd never make anything over 40 minutes if it was going to be in single vinyl. So
I actually thought the last record was a bit longer than. I mean, it's like 40 minutes, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 40. Yeah.
And it's not that it feels too long, but like I remember when I got it and being like, this is a bit longer than I expected.
Yeah. But it's gonna be, the one before that, Slight Disconnects. I was like, we are making a half an hour, 10-song album here, people, and it's going to be a new wave, snappy little thing. So, but at that time, I don't understand how we got away with making that record. Like, we had budgets of hundreds of thousands of pounds that we could have spent anywhere, and we recorded it for $5,000 in Glasgow, and it sounds like it. But it's some of the songs, I think, if I go back to it occasionally, I've not heard it for ages, I'm like, what the fuck is this? And to be honest, it's hard to separate from your own art. But that's quite an amazing feeling to go back and be like, I don't understand this. I don't understand what this is.
It's
And so,
funny.
I'll give ourselves credit for that. I know exactly what social dancing is. It's a fairly slick pop record.
Yeah.
Return to Central is the one I love the most. I
Is
just
it?
enjoy the sound of it so much. It makes me cry because it's really fucking emotional in there. Some of the
Yeah.
melodies and
Yeah.
stuff, and
Yeah.
lyrically, it's really really dark. So they're all different. But I don't. The one I don't understand is the New Transistor Heroes. Yeah, I've made a record we don't understand.
Yeah. No,
It's
I
quite a
can.
weird thing.
It is weird. It's like when I was writing my book, I was listening to the two records that my band made when I was like kind of your age
Yeah, yeah.
when you made that record, and I was just like a slightly different thing for me. I was just a bit like, why are you so sad? Like, why do you sound so sad? You're like 22, you know. Like you should be like taking. I mean, I was sometimes taking
Yeah.
drugs, but like like it's so weird that this stuff exists and it's a document of your
But
life at a
the
moment.
weird thing is, we're talking about just being sad and being 22. We made Return to Central in the year 2000, um, when all of the record labels that we had were slowly or quickly losing interest. And by the end of recording Return to Central, we didn't really have any record deals. So essentially, we made a really sad record, uh, our third album, and then we lost all the record deals. John was 21 when we got dropped.
It's mad.
21. I'm like, I was 24. I'm ancient. We were done
Yeah.
by that age. That's again, not to feel sorry for yourself, but that seems mental that these musicians have achieved this amount and done these things, and it was all done by the time that one of us was 21, barely legal to drink in the venues that we were playing in. But also we made such a bizarrely, miserable album for being that age. So you're absolutely right. Why are you
It,
so sad?
it's also weird as well. I mean, like, I I was listening to Radiohead recently. I have a quite complicated relationship with Radiohead
Uh,
because when when I was doing a fanzine and like Bis were my life. You know what I mean? Like a band like
yeah,
Radiohead felt like the enemy, right? But like I kind of like them. It's
yeah,
almost like kind of kids during punk that weren't supposed to listen to Pink Floyd, but they did. You know. So, I'm 43 now, so I'm just allowed to
exactly,
like.
exactly,
I'm just allowed to like whatever I like, right?
absolutely.
So, but I went back and I was listening to Radiohead the other day, and I was like, why are you so fucking miserable? Like this was like 1997. It was
Yeah,
amazing, you know. Like I can understand if like OK Computer came out now, I'd be like, well, yeah, AI and
I know.
war in the Middle East and all that. There's a lot to be miserable about, but fucking hell,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know. I don't know.
yeah,
I just think with your band though, like I just think people are going to write really good things about you when you die.
yeah, definitely. I'm okay with that now. I think you
Yeah,
just come to terms with it. It's like, um, you know, yeah, I think you're right. I think it'll come eventually, but I just want to keep going because stopping isn't really an option. So I don't want kind of didn't want to do any more records when we sort of started doing gigs again because I've said this before where I can't think of any good comeback albums. That's nonsense now. There was definitely a period where people were reforming and it was like, why have you done this? Why are you tarnishing
yeah.
your legacy? Our legacy was so weird in the first place that we might as well just do it.
I just think as well though, it's as soon as you get. I mean, I almost come back to that Future Heads thing. Like there's a little run of that band where like, okay, they're friends, but I genuinely think they were like the best band in the
Yeah.
world, right? Like if you'd seen them, pre record deal, to be honest, but like there's this window where I was like, I know where this is coming from, as in sort of new wave and stuff, but or post punk, but like I've never heard anything like it the way they did it, and it was so. And I think in a way, like when they got signed, when they signed to a major, it sort of it sort of fucked them up a little bit,
Yeah.
Obviously, that's kind of what they wanted to do, and it was great, and I'm sure it really mattered to them. But I just remember thinking like, once they'd got dropped, there's a bit of like, oh well, how do we get back to where we were, rather than actually being like, we're so fucking weird and interesting and cool as a band. It's
Yeah.
almost an anomaly that happened to us.
Yeah.
and I also just know that, you know, a band like them or a band like yourselves or whatever, like, they're the bands that just matter to people. Do you know? Like, I just think that thing of being like, oh well, how do we? Almost like the thing is as well. It's like it's all just so fucked. I don't just mean right now. I just mean that like people like rubbish music.
Well, they always have done. That's fine.
Do you know what I mean? It's like it's
But yeah,
always just weird when
yeah,
a band that are good get popular.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
weird.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, but I think it's the same sort of yeah. The Futurehead's first couple of records, they were riding high and they were great, and they
Yeah.
always been they continued to be great. But it's that it's I feel a sort of kindred spiritness in that getting sort of churned out by the music industry after a needlessly short period, and then just sort of chasing yourself for the rest of it, and it's yeah, and whereas some in like field music have just sort of I'm sure they would like to make a lot more money doing their thing, but they just have always done their own thing their own way, and so whereas us in the Future Heads kind of Icarused it a little bit and just got a bit too close, and it's really hard to come back from that with
Yeah.
with your brain intact.
Yeah,
Um,
but listen, if I die first, then I do expect at Jamfest, the two of you, Biss and the Future Heads, to
hell yeah,
argue about who's going to headline. You
that's fine. It'll definitely be them.
know?
It's fine.
Yeah, Art, Art Brute opening or something.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
I'm so proud that I've managed to make it through this without like sneezing or coughing.
Well done.
So I think I'm going to try and quit while I'm ahead.
Do it.
But I think that we should do this again in like 6 months.
Hell yeah.
We'll send emails back and forth. What are you going to? I mean, when are you making another record?
Well, I mean, we're soon, soon. There's always something to go. It's the same. I'll finish this the way I started it. Being like it's so hard sometimes to get the mental energy again to put something together and put it out there and have it ignored. So, but I tell you what, like we're always still doing things. Amanda's always so enthusiastic to keep doing things, and Amanda keeps my brain in a decent place when it comes to positivity. Um, she's always wanting to do merch things. We get offered lots of things. We usually turn most of them down, but she never stops being polite and civil to everyone that wants us to do things.
Yeah,
And so it's like I kind of want to. I want to keep doing it for me. I want to keep doing it for John, but I want to keep doing it for Amanda as well because I know it. This band means a lot to me, but it really means a lot to Amanda.
yeah.
It's,
That comes. I mean, obviously that's always come across, but it does
yeah,
come across that that there is an element of you doing that for Manda.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's we wouldn't do it if she lost enthusiasm for it. It would be easier for me and John to not do it anymore.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so yeah, in a way, that is exactly it. So for that reason, we'll keep going. I'm in two minds whether just to we've got a lot of kind of jerky angular pop XTC type things. We might put them together and just do a short album, or we might weirdly talking about New Transistor Heroes might just go and do all the best things all together in one completely uncohesive, sprawling type album. I can't decide. I feel like a sprawling masterpiece might be the best way to go out, but I suppose the way that people consume music now, a little short 10-track XTC pop album might actually be the better way to do it. So I don't know. Do them both.
At some point, I'm gonna write the book. You know,
Yeah,
I've said this for years, my only problem with it is that I think I could get it like Alcopop. You know, Alcopop,
yeah,
like they're like doing books,
yeah.
roughly,
Of course.
and I'm like, oh, you know, maybe that's it. And then there's been part of me that's like, oh well, you know, do you make it like, you know, do you make it like Mogwai and Delgado's and kind of tie everything in together? Firstly, I've had a little bit of a fallout with Stuart,
All right.
so that might not be on the cards for
Okay.
the immediate
I won't
future.
ask.
But also, well, you know, I think me and him are two people who can easily fall out with people. It's going to happen. But also, I always feel a bit like I'd be a bit of a fraud doing it because I'm a bit like, well, I want it in Glasgow. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's got to be someone in Glasgow that can tell that story better.
I know.
But then I
It's-
also just, when I look at like my box of fanzines, I'm a bit like, someone should tell that story.
yeah, there's definitely a story in there. I mean, I've been getting badgered to start writing things. See, because I read lots of music biographies. I don't think the music biography world needs another white middle class middle aged man telling a story. But our story is quite interesting.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's definitely a different. It's not the trajectory isn't exactly a little band, big band. Now I'm nice and comfortable. It's a full circle story really. So with really really weird stuff in it. So
And
yeah,
just because,
if I had the energy, I would maybe do it. But I think I would like you to do it instead.
thanks for passing the book. No, well, the thing is there's bits. I mean, mine's it's one for a conversation, not when I'm recording it, but mine's kind of in, like I say, development hell. Like it's finished, but there's a good 1,000 words on Bis in there. You know,
Yeah.
like the writing about being a teenager was a lot of fun, kind of revisiting stuff. And I don't know, it's weird. I was thinking, I mean, it didn't really make it in the book, but I was writing about kind of like indie pop gigs I went to as a teenager, and I mean, they were mental.
Yeah,
Like they weren't just like. I mean, there's loads of stuff of like teenagers out of their minds on like Alka-Pops, and like, I mean, just proper
yeah.
teenage revolution stuff. You know what I
Carnage,
mean?
yeah.
Like, yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Yes.
so it's been so nice speaking to you, man. Let's do this
Yeah, man.
again, like I say, at some point. And but we finally got there, and I think we should be
We
proud
did.
of that.
Yes, I'll applaud myself and you.